I cheated on my husband with his brother and his family helped me win in court, until he came back with proof, and destroyed my alimony. I had everything. That's what I kept telling myself every morning I woke up in our king-sized bed with the view of the hills. Everything. A husband who trusted me completely, a house that made my old friends jealous, financial security I never had growing up. Dorian Hale was the kind of man people described as solid. Petroleum geologist, worked for international energy firms, traveled to places I couldn't pronounce to analyze rock samples and advise on drilling sites. He was methodical, calm, the type who never raised his voice even when I deliberately pushed buttons. When we met 7 years ago, I thought that calmness was maturity. Stability. Now? It just felt predictable. He'd come home from his field assignments, kiss me on the forehead, ask about my day, and then disappear into his home office to write reports. Weekends were spent hiking or visiting his parents. Routine. Safe. Boring. I didn't plan for things to change. I really didn't. But then Marek started coming around more often. Dorian's younger brother was everything Dorian wasn't: charismatic, spontaneous, always had some story about a real estate deal gone sideways or a client he'd charmed into signing. He worked in commercial real estate development, the kind of job that involved expensive dinners and networking events. Where Dorian analyzed geological formations, Marek analyzed people. And he was good at it. It started innocently enough. He'd drop by when Dorian was working late, help me carry groceries, stay for a glass of wine. We'd talk about nothing: TV shows, his latest project, my frustrations with the book club I joined to fill the empty afternoons. "You're too smart for those people," he said once, refilling my glass. "They don't even know it." I laughed it off. But I liked hearing it. The touches started at a family dinner 3 months ago. Conrad and Vivian, Dorian's parents, had invited us over for some celebration I can't even remember now. Marek was there, of course. When I got up to help clear plates, his hand rested on the small of my back as he passed behind me. Just for a second. Long enough that I noticed. Long enough that I didn't move away. The text messages came next. Memes at first, then inside jokes about his parents' weird habits, then late night messages when Dorian was already asleep beside me. "You awake? Can't sleep. Thinking about that thing you said at dinner. You were right. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" I told myself it was harmless. Friendly. But I started waiting for those messages. Started checking my phone more often. When Dorian left for a 3-week assignment in West Texas, I felt relieved instead of lonely. Marek showed up on the 4th night with a bottle of wine from some vineyard he'd visited over the weekend. "Thought you might want company," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Must get quiet here when he's gone." I should have said no. Should have made an excuse about being tired or having plans. But I'd spent 4 days alone in this house, and the silence had started feeling like weight pressing down on my chest. "One glass," I said, stepping aside. We finished the bottle. He asked me questions Dorian never asked anymore: what I wanted out of life, what I thought about when I couldn't sleep, whether I was happy. Really happy. I answered honestly. Too honestly. When he kissed me, I kissed him back. I didn't feel guilty. That's the part that should bother me, but it doesn't. Dorian had become so absorbed in his work, so content with our predictable routine. I deserved to feel wanted. Desired. Alive. Marek made me feel alive. We were careful. Messages deleted immediately. He never stayed past midnight. We had 2 weeks before Dorian came home, and we made the most of them. I was in the shower when I heard the front door open. My blood went cold. Dorian wasn't supposed to be back for another week. I threw on a robe, heart hammering, and walked into the bedroom. He was standing in the doorway. Overnight bag still in his hand. His eyes weren't on me. They were on the nightstand. On my phone. The screen was lit up, unlocked, and I watched his expression change as he read whatever message was displayed there. His jaw tightened. The bag dropped from his hand. When he finally looked at me, his voice was quiet. Too quiet. "We need to talk." "Which message did you read?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dorian set the phone down carefully on the nightstand. Too carefully. The one where my brother asks if I suspect anything yet. And the one where you tell him the coast is clear for another week. My mind raced through damage control options. Deny everything? Claim it was taken out of context? But his face, that methodical, analytical face, told me he'd already processed every angle. "How long?" he asked. "Dorian, how long?" 2 weeks, I said. Then, Because I couldn't stop myself. You were gone. You're always gone. He nodded slowly, like I'd just confirmed a hypothesis. So this is my fault. I didn't say that. You just did. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling Marek. Don't. But he was already dialing. Put it on speaker. It rang 4 times before Marek's voice came through, casual and warm. Hey, brother. Back early? We need to talk, Dorian said. Serena's here. I'm putting you on speaker. The pause was barely noticeable. Okay. What's going on? I read your messages. Both of you. So let's skip the part where you lie. Another pause, longer this time. When Marek spoke again, his voice had changed, tighter, defensive. Look, Dorian, this isn't what you think. Then what is it? She came on to me. I was trying to protect you, man. I didn't know how to tell you. I froze. He was throwing me under the bus. Just like that. Dorian's eyes locked onto mine. Is that true, Serena? I should have been outraged. Should have screamed at Marek through the phone. But something in Dorian's expression made me pause. He was watching me like he was documenting evidence, not asking his wife for the truth. It was both of us, I said quietly. Jesus Christ. Dorian ran a hand through his hair. Get over here. Now. Marek arrived 20 minutes later. I'd gotten dressed by then, thrown on jeans and a sweater. The 3 of us sat in the living room, Dorian in the armchair, Marek and me on opposite ends of the couch. Start talking, Dorian said. Marek leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I should have told you the first time she made a move. But I didn't want to hurt you, and I thought I could handle it. Keep her at a distance. That's not, I started. You were the one texting me at midnight, Marek cut in, looking at me with something like pity. Asking me to come over. Telling me you were lonely. My mouth went dry. He was rewriting the entire thing right in front of Dorian. Before I could respond, Dorian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It's Mom. He answered, and I watched his face tighten as Vivian's voice came through. Your father and I are coming over. Marek called us. Don't make any decisions until we get there. They arrived 30 minutes later, Conrad in his usual slacks and polo, Vivian in a cardigan that probably cost more than my car payment. They didn't hug Dorian. Didn't even look at him at first. Vivian went straight to Marek, touched his shoulder. Are you all right? I blinked. What? Dorian stood. Did he tell you what happened? He told us Serena has been pursuing him for months, Conrad said, his voice flat. And that you're blowing this out of proportion. Out of proportion? Dorian's voice finally rose. My wife and my brother. Marriages have problems, Vivian interrupted. You work too much. You've always been so focused on your career that you don't see what's happening at home. This is a cry for help, Dorian. Not a betrayal. I watched, stunned, as Dorian's own mother defended me. Defended Marek. You've always been jealous of your brother, Conrad added. Even as kids. Now you're looking for reasons too. Get out, Dorian said quietly. Nobody moved. Get out. All of you. Conrad and Vivian exchanged glances. Then Vivian turned to me. Serena, honey, could we talk outside for a moment? I followed her to the porch, my head spinning. This marriage is over, she said, her voice low. We both know it. And Dorian's going to make this difficult, he always does when he doesn't get his way. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through contacts. I know a lawyer. Theodore Cross. He specializes in protecting women in difficult divorces. High conflict situations. I don't. Just take his number. Trust me. You're going to need someone aggressive. I took the number. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the guest room and stared at Theodore Cross's contact information. Dorian had moved his things out already, left without a word. I called Marek. They believed you, I said when he picked up. I know. He sounded relieved. Satisfied. Why did you lie about who started it? Does it matter? They took our side. That's what counts. Our side. The words settled into my chest, warm and validating. His family had chosen us over him. We had the advantage. I'm meeting with the lawyer tomorrow, I said. Good. And Serena? His voice dropped lower. We need to be smart about this. Dorian's going to fight. We need to make sure the narrative is airtight. What do you mean? There are some financial documents. Things that could make it look like he's been hiding assets. I can. Adjust some records. Make it look worse than it is. I should have been horrified. Should have hung up. Instead, I said, how soon can you have them ready? 3 days later, the divorce papers were filed. Theodore Cross sat across from me in his downtown office, reviewing my statement. Emotional abuse, financial control, isolation, he read aloud. This is good. The judge will be sympathetic. He looked up. You said your brother-in-law witnessed some of this behavior? Yes. Is he willing to testify? My phone buzzed. A text from Marek, whatever you need. I'll back you up. I showed Theodore the message. He smiled. Then we're going to win this. Theodore prepped me like I was preparing for a performance. Which, I guess, I was. We're minimal makeup. Nothing that looks expensive. We want you to appear vulnerable, not wealthy. He slid a folder across his desk. Practice these phrases. I felt trapped. I was afraid to disagree with him. He controlled every aspect of our finances. But he didn't. Doesn't matter what he did. Matters what the judge believes. Theodore leaned back in his chair. Your husband is calm, analytical, successful. That works against him. Judges see a composed man and assume he's cold. Controlling. We're just confirming what they already suspect. I practiced in the mirror for 3 days. Crying on cue. Making my voice shake at the right moments. Marek called the night before the trial. You ready? I think so. Don't think. No. He paused. I'm testifying tomorrow. Third witness. I'm going to tell them what I saw. What you saw. How he treated you. The intimidation. The times he lost his temper. His voice was steady, confident. They'll believe me. I'm his brother. Why would I lie? The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Dorian sat at the defense table with his lawyer, a competent-looking woman in her 40s who kept glancing at her notes. He wore a suit I'd helped him pick out 2 years ago for a conference. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Theodore went first, laying out the narrative in his opening statement. A controlling husband who isolated his wife. Financial manipulation. Emotional abuse that escalated over 7 years of marriage. Then Marek took the stand. He looked nervous. Appropriately nervous. Hands clasped in his lap, voice just uncertain enough to sound genuine. Can you describe your brother's relationship with the defendant? Theodore asked. Dorian was. He was always intense, Marek said. Even growing up. He needed things done his way. When Serena came into his life, I thought maybe that would change. But it got worse. Can you give an example? There was this dinner at my parents' house, maybe a year ago. Serena mentioned wanting to take a painting class. Dorian shut it down immediately. Said it was a waste of money, that she should focus on managing the household better. Marek looked at me, something like sympathy in his eyes. The way he said it. You could see her just shrink. None of that happened. We'd never had that conversation. Dorian's lawyer cross-examined, but Marek held steady. Gave small details that sounded true. A date that was close but not exact. A restaurant we'd actually been to. Mixed truth with fiction until it was impossible to separate. Vivian testified next. My son has always had difficulty with emotions, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. As a child, he'd have these outbursts. Throw things when he didn't get his way. We worked with therapists, but some patterns. They don't go away. I watched Dorian's face. Nothing. He just sat there, taking notes on a legal pad. Then came the financial documents. Theodore presented bank statements, account records, offshore holdings, all showing Dorian had been hiding assets. Moving money where I couldn't see it. Preparing to leave me with nothing. I knew they were forged. Marek had created them using Dorian's actual account numbers, mixing fake transactions with real ones. But they looked legitimate. Professional. Dorian's lawyer objected. Requested time to verify the documents. The judge allowed 3 days, then reconvened. When the verification came back, there were irregularities, but nothing definitive. The forensics couldn't prove they were fake. Not conclusively. My turn came on day 4. Theodore had coached me through every question. I wore a simple dress, no jewelry except my wedding ring. When he asked about my marriage, I let my voice break. I loved him. I really did. But he made me feel so small. Every decision had to go through him. What I wore, who I talked to, how I spent money, even though I worked before we got married, he convinced me to quit. Said a wife should focus on home. I cried. Real tears, because some part of me had convinced myself these things were partially true. That Dorian's calmness was really control. His trust was really manipulation. Did you ever fear for your safety? I hesitated. Just long enough. Yes. Dorian looked up then. Met my eyes for the first time. His expression didn't change. The verdict came 2 days later. In the matter of Hale v. Hale, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay alimony in the amount of $12,000 per month for a period of 5 years. The marital home, vehicle, and 50% of all retirement accounts are awarded to Mrs. Hale. Theodore squeezed my hand under the table. We won. I left the courthouse in a daze. Marek was waiting in the parking garage, pulled me into a kiss the moment the elevator doors closed. You were perfect, he whispered against my mouth. We actually did it. I told you we would. We separated before reaching the exit. Had to maintain appearances for a few more months. But as I walked toward my car now, legally, I felt lighter than I had in years. Then I saw him. Dorian was standing on the courthouse steps, phone in his hand. He looked up as I passed. Our eyes met. Enjoy it while it lasts, he said quietly. Not angry. Not bitter. Just factual. Then he turned and walked away. I stood there for a moment, his words echoing in my head. But Marek was calling my name from across the parking lot, and I had won, and Dorian was just being a sore loser. I pushed the unease away and went to celebrate my victory. The first alimony check arrived 12 days after the trial. $12,000, deposited directly into my account. I stared at the notification on my phone for a full minute, waiting for it to disappear. But it stayed. Real money. My money. I redecorated the house within a month. Ripped out the gray-blue paint Dorian had chosen for the living room and replaced it with warm cream. Bought new furniture, a sectional that cost more than our old couch and love seat combined. Erased him from every corner. The alimony kept coming. On the first of every month, like clockwork. No late payments. No angry messages. No contact at all. Dorian had moved into a small apartment on the east side of town. I drove past it once, curious. The building was fine, not a dump, but nothing like what we'd had. His truck was parked in the lot. Lights were on in one of the second-floor units. He was just living, working, paying me what the court ordered. That phrase kept circling back. Enjoy it while it lasts. But weeks turned into months, and nothing happened. No legal challenges. No attempts to contact me. He was a ghost who funded my new life. Marek moved in after 3 months. We'd agreed to wait longer, but his lease was up and Conrad and Vivian had reluctantly accepted our relationship. Vivian even hosted a dinner where she managed to talk about us as a couple without mentioning Dorian's name once. You two seem happy, she said, refilling my wine glass. That's what matters. Conrad nodded, though he looked tired. Older than I remembered. Family supports family. Marek was different once we were living together. The charm was still there, but now I saw what came after. He drank more than I'd realized, whiskey every night, sometimes starting before dinner. Got jealous when I mentioned male coworkers from my new part-time job at a gallery. Why do you need to work anyway? He asked one night, already 3 drinks in. You're getting 12 grand a month from my brother. I like having something to do. You have me. He'd apologize the next morning. Bring coffee to bed, kiss my shoulder, promise he was just stressed about a deal falling through. And I'd forgive him because the alternative was admitting I'd traded one life for something worse. At least I had the money. At least I was financially secure. But some nights I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and remember Dorian's face on those courthouse steps. That calm. That certainty. Enjoy it while it lasts. What did he know that I didn't? The letter arrived exactly 6 months after the final divorce decree. I was making coffee when I heard the mail slot. Among the usual bills and catalogs was a thick manila envelope with a law firm's return address I didn't recognize, Reese & Associates. My hand shook as I opened it. Notice of motion to reopen case based on newly discovered evidence. I read it 3 times. New evidence. Fraud upon the court. Material misrepresentation. The words blurred together. A court date was set for 3 weeks away. I called Theodore immediately. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding annoyed. These motions get filed all the time, he said when I explained. Bitter ex-husbands grasping at straws. The bar for reopening a case is extremely high. He'd need to prove actual fraud, and we both know. What if he has something? Like what? We presented documentation. Witnesses. Your testimony was consistent. Unless he's got a time machine, there's nothing that can change the facts of the case. But there was something in his voice. Uncertainty. I'll look into it. Don't panic. I hung up and paced the living room. Tried Marek's cell. Straight to voicemail. He finally came home after 8 that night. I heard his car in the driveway, then the front door. When he walked into the kitchen, his face was the color of old newspaper. "Did you get a letter?" I asked. He nodded slowly, dropped his briefcase on the counter. His hands were trembling. "What's wrong?" Theodore said these motions almost never succeed. "They have recordings, Serena." His voice cracked. "They have recordings." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "I got a call from some lawyer. Octavia Reese. She wanted to give me the courtesy of knowing what they'd be presenting in court." He sat down heavily in one of the new dining chairs. "Dorian recorded us. Conversations about the trial. About the forged documents. About coaching his parents on what to say." "That's illegal." "It's not. I looked it up. Single-party consent state. If one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal." He looked at me with wild eyes. "He recorded everything in his own house before he moved out. We planned the whole thing in his living room." The room tilted. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "How much do they have?" She didn't say exactly. But enough. Enough that she's not worried about winning. Marek stood, started pacing. "We need to figure out what to do. Maybe we can claim we were coerced, or, when did you talk to her?" "This afternoon." "And you're just telling me now?" "I've been sitting in my car for 3 hours trying to figure out what we're going to do." I looked at my phone. Tried calling Dorian's old number. Disconnected. I pulled up his work email from old conversations. Bounced back. Undeliverable. "Where is he?" I asked. "I don't know. I drove by his apartment on the way home. It's empty. Like he was never there." The unease that had been lurking in my chest for 6 months exploded into full panic. Dorian had vanished. And he'd been planning this the entire time. Enjoy it while it lasts. 3 weeks. We had 3 weeks before the court date. And Dorian had already won. The 3 weeks passed in a blur of panic and failing strategies. Theodore stopped returning my calls after the first week. When I finally cornered him at his office, he looked exhausted. "I reviewed the motion," he said. "They have an evidence list. It's extensive. Can we fight it?" "Serena." He removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes. "If what they're claiming is accurate, we have a serious problem. I need to know, did you and Marek discuss falsifying documents in Dorian's home?" I didn't answer. "That's what I thought." He stood. "I'm going to recommend you find new representation." "I can't, I won't be implicated in fraud." "You told me to build a narrative." "I told you to present your case persuasively. I didn't tell you to commit perjury." He walked to the door, held it open. "Get a lawyer. A good one. You're going to need it." The courtroom was exactly the same as it had been 6 months ago. Same wooden benches, same fluorescent lights, same judge. But everything felt different. Dorian sat at the plaintiff's table with 3 lawyers I'd never seen before. The lead was a woman in her late 40s, sharp-featured, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly alimony. Octavia Reese. Former prosecutor, Marek had discovered. Specialized in white-collar crime. She didn't look at us when we entered. Dorian did, though. Just once. The same calm expression from the courthouse steps. Then he turned back to his legal team. Marek sat beside me, his leg bouncing under the table. Vivian and Conrad were in the gallery behind us, silent and pale. Theodore had withdrawn from my case 2 days ago. I was representing myself now, which the judge had allowed with obvious reluctance. "This is a hearing on the motion to reopen based on newly discovered evidence," the judge began. "Ms. Reese, you may proceed." Octavia stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. What we're about to present is a systematic pattern of fraud upon this court. Perjured testimony. Falsified documents. Conspiracy to manipulate the judicial process." She moved to a laptop connected to the courtroom speakers. "I'll begin with audio recordings." She pressed play. My voice filled the courtroom. Crystal clear. "So you can make it look like he's been hiding money?" Marek's response: "Easy. I have access to his account numbers from when I helped him set up his retirement accounts. I can create statements that show transfers to offshore holdings that don't exist. Won't they verify? By the time they do, it'll be enough to establish the pattern. Judges see offshore accounts, they assume guilt." I felt the blood drain from my face. That conversation had happened in Dorian's living room, 4 months before the trial. We'd been drinking wine. I'd thought we were alone. Octavia played 3 more recordings. Each one worse than the last. Marek and me laughing about playing the victim. Me rehearsing my testimony, with Marek coaching me on how to cry convincingly. A conversation where Vivian asked what story we needed her to tell. The courtroom was completely silent except for our voices, planning everything. When the recordings finished, Octavia moved to financial evidence. A man in a suit took the stand, financial fraud investigator, not forensic accountant. He explained in methodical detail how the offshore account documents had been created. Showed the metadata from Marek's work computer. The IP address. The timestamps that proved they were manufactured 3 days before being submitted to court. These accounts never existed, he concluded. Every transaction was fabricated. Theodore had been right to run. Then came the text messages. Deleted conversations between me and Marek, recovered by a data specialist. Between Marek and Vivian, coordinating her testimony. Even messages where Conrad asked what version of events they needed him to corroborate. Everything. Every lie. Every manipulation. Presented chronologically, systematically, undeniably. I looked at Marek. He was staring at the table, jaw clenched. The judge's voice cut through the silence. Does the defendant wish to cross-examine any of these witnesses? I couldn't speak. What would I even say? Ms. Hale? No, Your Honor, I whispered. Octavia called Marek to the stand. He looked at me, panicked, then at his parents. Conrad shook his head slightly, don't do it. But the bailiff was waiting. Under questioning, Marek started to crumble. Did you create falsified financial documents? Serena asked me to. Yes or no, Mr. Hale? Yes. Did you commit perjury during the original trial? His hands were shaking. She was going to leave him anyway. I was just helping. Yes or no? Yes. I watched him throw me under the bus for the second time. Claim I'd pressured him. That he'd been trying to protect me. The judge's expression grew harder with each answer. Vivian was called next. Then Conrad. Both admitted to lying under oath. Vivian cried. Real tears this time, but not for Dorian. For herself. The judge called a 15-minute recess. When we reconvened, her voice was ice. I have reviewed all evidence presented. The original decree in this case was obtained through fraud, perjury, and manufactured evidence. It is hereby vacated in its entirety. The room spun. All alimony payments are to be returned with interest. All assets are returned to Mr. Hale. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Perjury. Fraud. Conspiracy. She looked at each of us in turn. You have made a mockery of this court. She turned to Dorian. Mr. Hale, do you wish to make a statement? He stood slowly. Looked at me. At Marek. At his parents. No, he said quietly. I already said goodbye. Then he walked out. No celebration. No anger. Just done. The courtroom erupted in procedural discussion, next steps, criminal referrals, asset recovery timelines. But I couldn't hear any of it. I sat there, surrounded by the wreckage of my lies, and finally understood. Dorian had this evidence before the first trial. He could have presented it then. Could have stopped everything. But he didn't. He let us lie. Let us commit crimes on the record. Let us forge documents and perjure ourselves. And then he gave us 6 months. 6 full months to come clean. To show even a shred of integrity. None of us did. He didn't destroy us. We destroyed ourselves. He just made sure everyone was watching. The criminal charges came faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, formal indictments were filed. Perjury. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Filing false documents. Marek got additional charges, forgery, evidence tampering. Conrad and Vivian each faced 2 counts of perjury. I had $72,000 in my bank account. 6 months of alimony payments. The court froze it immediately, pending restitution. I had to return every cent, plus interest. The house went back to Dorian within days, sheriff's deputies supervised while I packed my things. The car, gone. My retirement accounts, already liquidated to pay the first lawyer, were now Dorian's again anyway. I called Theodore one last time. His secretary said he was unavailable. Would always be unavailable. The public defender assigned to my case was a tired woman in her 30s who met with me for exactly 20 minutes. The evidence is overwhelming, she said, flipping through the file. Audio recordings. Financial forensics. Your own testimony contradicting itself. The DA is offering a plea deal, 18 months suspended sentence, 5 years probation, 200 hours community service, permanent criminal record. What if I fight it? She looked at me like I was insane. Then you go to trial, lose, and face actual prison time. Take the deal. I took the deal. Marek's relationship with me ended via text message. 3 days after the hearing, while I was packing boxes in what used to be my house. This is your fault. You pushed me into this. Don't contact me again. His lawyer had apparently advised him to distance himself immediately. Blame me for everything. He lost his real estate license the same week, pending the outcome of his criminal case. His sentencing was harsher, actual jail time, 6 months, plus probation. Conrad and Vivian's world collapsed in slower motion. Vivian filed for divorce within a month, trying to salvage whatever reputation she had left. But the local news had covered the story, family conspiracy exposed in divorce fraud case. Their friends stopped calling. Conrad lost his consulting contracts with the banks he'd worked with for 30 years. Nobody wanted to associate with someone who'd committed perjury to help his son destroy his other son. I moved back into my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. They didn't say much. Just made space and avoided eye contact. Social media was brutal. Someone from the courtroom had recognized me, posted about the case. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. My name was now permanently linked to divorce fraud in search results. I started my community service on a Tuesday. Picking up trash along the highway in an orange vest. A criminal record that would follow me forever. No job prospects. No relationship. No money. No friends. Everything I'd won 6 months ago had evaporated like it never existed. But the worst part wasn't the consequences. It was understanding how completely I'd been outplayed. Dorian had those recordings from the beginning. I knew that now. He'd placed voice recorders in his own home before he moved out, legal, since it was his house. He'd heard everything. Every conversation. Every plan. Every lie. He could have presented that evidence during the first trial. Could have stopped us before we committed perjury. Before Marek forged documents. Before his parents lied under oath. But he didn't. He let us do it. Let us dig ourselves deeper. And then, this was the part that made me sick, he gave us 6 months. 6 full months of paying alimony, staying silent, watching us live our lives. Waiting to see if anyone would come forward. If anyone would tell the truth. Marek could have confessed. Could have admitted the forgery before criminal charges were filed. Conrad and Vivian could have recanted their testimony. I could have returned the money. Could have said I lied. None of us did. We all just kept taking. Kept lying. Kept pretending we'd gotten away with it. Through the legal paperwork, I learned Dorian had transferred to Norway for work. Some long-term assignment analyzing North Sea petroleum reserves. He'd sold the house 3 weeks before the second hearing. I'd been served notice but hadn't processed what it meant. He'd liquidated everything, started completely over. He was gone before he even walked out of that courtroom. The phrase haunted me at night. I already said goodbye. He'd said goodbye months ago. Maybe even before the first trial. He'd already moved on, already started fresh, while we were still celebrating our victory. His revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was just letting us be exactly who we were. Documenting it. Waiting. Then presenting the truth. We destroyed ourselves. He just made sure there was a record. I saw Vivian once, 3 months after everything fell apart. At a grocery store. We made eye contact across the produce section. She looked older. Smaller. She turned and walked away without acknowledging me. Her son, her real victim, was somewhere in Norway. Starting over. Living a life we'd never be part of. And me? I'm sitting in my childhood bedroom, writing this because I can't sleep. Because that calm expression still haunts me. Because I finally understand what I destroyed. Dorian didn't destroy my marriage. Didn't destroy my life. Didn't destroy anything. I did. He just made sure everyone watched. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.